all about the wonderful world of premise. So a big welcome to Sam.
Thank you, Dan. I don't know, well, maybe I shouldn't thank you for that. But I'm actually feeling okay. So I obviously didn't hit the drink too hard last night. But good to see everyone. A warm welcome from Premise to those of you here and for those online as well. Apparently, if I stay in this spot, you'll be able to see me. So if I wander too much, just push me back. Okay, so I've got about 20 minutes in this session. And I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes and then allow 5 minutes for any questions, thoughts, and that type of thing. So we'll just kick off. So if you've read what's in the brochure, this is about mobile research and using mobiles research, but particularly just using mobile apps. And so what I'm going to go through is using mobiles an additional methodology you can use, or actually could it be the ultimate methodology that would replace all those ones that are traditional? So I'll run through that. We often talk about research needing to be agile, to be ever quicker. So again, using mobiles, is that the solution to that quest? And again, for you just to share your thoughts either after the presentation or in the breakout session afterwards. I'd really like to get your views on this as well. Okay, so a few stats. We all like data and we all like numbers. So there's a few varying figures on this about mobile ownership. Now, you've probably seen lots of stats. You know, there are more mobiles than there are people. But when you look at actual individual users, and this is across all types of mobiles, it's up to 90% ownership. And that's extremely high for a single technology around the world. So the other interesting fact I found out in researching this is that 92% of time is spent within apps, particularly with social media and communication apps. So we can all think of Facebook and WhatsApp as the main ones there. Only 8% of time is actually spent through the traditional web browser. And that contrasts a lot with the way that laptops and desktops are used. So just bear that in mind as we go through this, that actually almost all time is spent within apps on people's phones. 150 times a day, apparently that's the average amount of time we pick up our phone. So it's some of you are going to be more or less than that, but it's obviously showing that the phone is with us all the time, but it's an active part of our lives. And for those of you who haven't disabled screen time on your phone, the average time spent on the phone is now approaching 5 hours a day, which, if we think about it, is far more than the traditional TV, radio, and other more traditional media consumption. Hence why we can now see the amount of advertising that is online and digital. Okay, so I'll just whiz through some of the traditional research methods that we're all probably aware of. So we've got, top right there, we've got our pen and paper, still widely used. Interviewer-led has some biases in that respect, but as I'm sure, as we'll agree, a very slow way of collecting and geographically biased. Top left, we've got telephone, or CATI is often called. That gets around the geographical bias that you get with more of paper and pen street interviewing, but again, quite labor intensive, and it does rely on having a large list of phone numbers and is now becoming much more difficult to reach younger people and people without landlines. So there's the traditional focus group in the middle there. Great for qualitative research. Again, difficult to scale when it's location-based, but online obviously becoming much more popular in that area. A few of the other ones, the postal vote. Again, this is quite good because it gets round that interviewer bias, so it's a self-completion, which we know is good. But again, completion rate's very low. You have to have addresses, sending stuff out. If you're looking for an agile and quick way of doing research, then postal, again, is becoming a little bit archaic. Now, these two at the bottom here, representing kind of like panels and online research that was kind of done more through desktops and laptops, things like that. They're not necessarily traditional research, but I would say they're transitional ones. So we've got an iPad there that you might get as a customer satisfaction in a store, and as I said, the more traditional way. The reason I say they're transitional is because, a bit like the way we've gone from kind of analog music into CDs, and now actually, that was paving the way for digital, but now we're using MP3 and streaming. I see these as the transitional technologies to mobile. So getting people online, but we'll look at the benefits of using mobile research to take it a step forward. So, six uses for using mobiles for research. We've got in the moment, and it's a widely used term, but this is where obviously we can use mobiles to capture what people are thinking, where they are, and it gets around that issue of having to recall stuff from maybe a few days or hours before. Geolocation, probably the single biggest benefit of mobiles. We know where people are, either at any time or when they're actually completing surveys. So again, it improves that validation. It also helps massively with targeting. Technology, if you can see that, that is just a snapshot of all the technologies in a phone. As we know, we're carrying around less and less because our mobiles do so much more in terms of technology. And what you find with using mobiles as research is the investment in the equipment has been done by the respondent themselves. They've got a camera, they've got GPS, they've got, most of the time, internet connection as well. So all of that is crammed in, and those are your tools as researchers. Now, of course, not every phone is smart, and the more traditional phones can be used simply for SMS. Highly powerful tool, and as we know, with the 6.6 or so, I think 6.3 billion phone users, that is a massive reach just by using SMS. Apps, I mean, we could probably have a whole presentation on the data that apps have, particularly with Facebook, and we know that the free-to-use apps where you're exchanging usage for your data is used. But again, just think about that fact that most people like to be in apps. So collecting research through apps is becoming a much more accessible way. Last thing, this just comes back to kind of the more qualitative side of research. Ethnography is ideal with mobiles because you can be in people's homes without any privacy issues. They can share their lives through either recording information or through image capture and video capture. So it's an ideal way of capturing that. Conscious of time, I'm going to whiz through a little bit faster. So the benefits. It's convenient because people have already got their mobiles with them. It's direct. You haven't got to employ interviewers or researchers or telephone call centers. As we've seen with the amount of mobiles, there is huge, you're tapping into a widely and mass adopted technology. It's potentially lower cost because of the equipment side of things that I pointed out. And lastly, with anonymity, two things. One is the fact that people aren't being interviewed by someone, so they can just share their views freely. But also, it's relatively easy to protect PII data, the same way that some of the apps do as well. So it gets around that issue. Okay, so I've just got three case studies now, and this is for you to learn a bit about how mobile research has been used, and then for you to decide, actually, for your businesses, is this something that you want to adopt more? So this was a study that was carried out by Visium and iProspect. It's actually online, this one. If you go to the Market Research Society website, you can see this one. But very briefly, what they did is they worked with Facebook and EE, and they set up a geolocation, a geofence around an IKEA store, and anybody that had, through the EE data, anyone that had passed through that, they divided up those that saw the ad and those that didn't see the ad. So they got a classic kind of control group. But what was key about this was that it could only really have been done by having that geofence and knowing that people had passed through that, and then seeing their response to ads. Second case study. this was carried out by Premise, the company I work for, and this was for a large CPG manufacturer looking at palm fruit and tracing right back to the first mile, which palm fruit is where palm oil is made from. So their ESG credentials that they wanted to uphold meant that they needed to find out exactly where the palm fruit was coming from, the price it was being paid. Now, traditionally, you would send out experts. In this case, you probably can't see the map, but this is in Indonesia, and it would take many weeks to go out and go around the farms, go look at the conditions and the price of it. What we did at Premise is we found local people to download the app, and you can see that represented in all these dots here. And they went out and they photographed and they recorded the conditions, they got the price of it, and what it meant is the CPG that had this got an understanding within just a few weeks of exactly the conditions that they were sourcing from at that beginning of that supply chain. The last one, again, this is another Premise example. So obviously, COVID has affected all our lives. And this was actually a study that was commissioned by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And it was part of an overall study into vaccine hesitancy. Now, this particular study was carried out in the UK. And what it was looking at is what information are people seeing or sharing, so both social media but also private messaging, that is influencing their hesitancy about getting a vaccine. So a classic screener, have you had the vaccine, have you not had the vaccine, and then looking into what are some of those things that you've seen. So there's just some examples here where people shared things that they had seen actually online, so there was not an issue with showing these, but people were also showing messages they had got with all sorts of outrageous conspiracy theories, but there were some genuine concerns in there as well. So what this meant is that the people who downloaded the app, they would be able to confidently share their information that they had been sent around the vaccine hesitancy. And this was then built up a picture from all these different areas into those drivers of vaccine hesitancy. And this was actually ended up being presented at the G7 conference earlier in the year. Okay. I've got 5 minutes left, so I'm pretty much bang on time. So I'd love to hear any questions or thoughts.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Sorry. Yeah, so I wondered, how do you get people to download your app? How do you recruit and make sure they're the right persons for it?
So we've had about 3.5 million people who've downloaded the app. We put our ads on social media, places like that, and it's their chance to earn some money. We just pay directly in the local currency. And then when they sign up to various screener type questions, so we can profile who they are, we obviously know where they are, that type of thing. We do deploy all the usual kind of QC when it comes to data, but our main recruitment is through social media.
Yeah, so when you have, for instance, on your case study on the traceability, would it be possible to use this kind of content, the pictures taken from the local people and the reports kind of getting on the local ground for external communication, or do you have to have a special consent for that?
What was the last bit? Special consent?
Consent.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. The short answer is yes. So when we produce that, we obviously aggregate it, but the disaggregated data is the location, the image, that type of stuff. We do screen for if there are if there's any personal identification data in there, but otherwise, yes, most of the time that data is available so people can see that. So there's a qualitative element to seeing it, but yeah, as I said, we do roll up that data as well.
How do you see the self-selection bias might or might have not influenced the results? Because it's people who, voluntarily download the app and self-report data.
Yes, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I guess it's something that exists across all research, isn't it? Those that are willing to participate. So there's a couple of things. One is that we provide a financial incentive, so we don't bias it in any way towards vouchering like that. There is a reward. So that just should encourage most people to do the appropriate amount. The other is just volume of data. So if we can get enough responses, then we will avoid that where there are people who are just trying to earn a lot of money through just participating in any type of research. So there's a classic screeners, but I think, yeah, like any research, there's always going to be some self-selection. So it doesn't necessarily get around that. That's a good question.
Thanks. Are there trends in mobile and device use which you're having to kind of keep an eye on, like the transition to the sort of so-called metaverse, and like how might that influence how you kind of carry out your methodologies?
Trends, I mean, there's a few things. I mean, there's the adoption of the phones, there's the technology itself, making sure that actually it works across all the different platforms. In terms of trends, I mean, there's regulatory things that we need to be careful of, asking certain countries. So we're in about 125 countries now, but each time we launch, we have to look at any of the sort of privacy issues. So that's probably the extent to which we look at that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, don't worry. It's just in terms of like, when people are starting to move to deviceless, kind of a deviceless paradigm, or like with, not Google Glasses, but like wearable tech, and like, are there ways that, you're going to have to adapt to that kind of new technological paradigm?
I see what you mean, yeah. Because Facebook have launched those new glasses now and things like that. So, yeah, there's other data. We form part of, the broader data collection. So as a company, we are focusing on, trying to represent that 6.3 billion people that have got mobiles. But we're more likely to work in parallel with the sort of data you could get from people, what those devices, whether it's, wearable technology, things like that. So we probably work in partnership with that rather than doing it ourselves. Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Perfect.